Hello, dear friends. It has been a couple of weeks since I have been with you in this hymn segment, and I have missed you. But as all of you know, we have been very busy getting the Christmas services together of this past week, which there were 4. And I do hope that you and your loved ones and your family were able to attend one or all of our online worship services, which we presented last week at First Church. Starting with our Lessons and Carol service, then our Blue Christmas service, our Christmas Eve service, and this past Sunday's first Sunday of Christmas service. It was a real joy to put these services together for you. And like I said, I hope you and your loved ones and family truly received a blessing. And it is a blessing to return this week, the last Wednesday of 2020. Bye, 2020. We're glad to see you go. But in this week, I wanted us to focus on a hymn that is not often sung, actually within our Christmas services by the congregation. Jake and I have presented this carol, Good King Wenceslaus, on many of our concerts or even as special music during many Christmas services themselves. But this hymn is not often sung by the congregations, and yet it is a wonderful hymn, a wonderful carol for us to explore at this time of year when we are truly needing to think upon the least among us. I love the fact that the basis of this hymn comes from Luke chapter 14, verses 13 and 14, which state, "But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the blind, and the lame among you, and you will be blessed, for they cannot repay you. For you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just." And as you will see when Jake and I present this song, this carol to you at the end of today's hymn segment, at the end of this commentary, the story behind this carol is one of helping the poor and the needy, the least among us who are suffering or who are greatly in need. And so I thought at this time of year, this would be a great time to explore the history behind this hymn, but also I hope that you will receive a blessing and will be stirred on to greater and greater deeds towards those in our community who are suffering or who are needy, hungry, just in need of care at this time of year. The story behind this hymn is about 2 men, a Bohemian duke and an Anglican minister, who lived nearly 1,000 years apart. Wenceslaus was born in Bohemia in the modern-day Czech Republic in the early 900s. Now, the province of Bohemia bordered another province called Moravia. And as a footnote, the early Moravians came and were known as Moravians because they fled this very province of Moravia into the former East Germany to a little town called Herrnhut. And that's where they were able to establish themselves as a church that ultimately became known as the Moravian Church. But tonight we focus on Wenceslaus, who was born in Bohemia, the other province of our modern-day Czech Republic, as I said, in the early 900s. His father, the Czech ruler, the Duke Radoslav, gave him a good education supervised by his godly grandmother. When his father died, Wenceslaus, seeing his mother mishandle many affairs of state, at the age of 18, stepped in and seized the reins of government. From the beginning, he proved to be quite a different kind of king. He sought good relations with surrounding nations, particularly with Germany. He took steps to reform the judicial system, reducing the number of death sentences and the arbitrary power of judges. He encouraged the building of churches and showed heartfelt concern for the poor. He reportedly cut firewood for orphans and widows, often carrying the provisions on his own shoulders through the snow. But Wenceslaus's brief reign ended suddenly. His pagan and rebellious brother, Boleslav, murdered him on September the 28th in the year 929 as he left for church. His people venerated him as a martyr, and today Wenceslaus is the patron saint of the modern Czech Republic. He would be hardly remembered, however, but for John Mason Neale, an Anglican minister with a passion for returning church architecture and music to their ancient grandeur. Neale helped establish a committee to investigate and restore dilapidated church buildings in Great Britain. He was particularly upset at the ugly stoves installed to heat churches during the Victorian era. Disliking the hymns of Isaac Watts, he also sought to return church music to its medieval roots. Neale worked hard to translate ancient Greek, Latin, and Syrian hymns into English. In so doing, he gave us the Christmas carols such as "Good Christian Men Rejoice," which is a 14th century text set to a 14th century tune. Also, O come, Emmanuel," a 9th century text set to a 15th century tune. He also translated the Palm Sunday hymn, "All Glory, Laud, and Honor," which we learned earlier this year is Trip Smith's favorite hymn. Good King Wenceslaus is not a translation, however, but an original poem written by John Mason Neale to honor a godly monarch's concern for the poor. Neale himself worked with the needy, serving as warden of a charitable residence for indigent old men. John Neale's antiquated opinions were widely scorned in his own day, but luckily, we still have this hymn, this original poem, Good King Wenceslaus, which is set to a Swedish carol, continuing to be sung in our churches today. May this message that Jake and I bring you now truly spur you to greater and greater deeds of love and kindness to those that are hungry, needy, and less fortunate among us. And in that spirit, may you and your family truly usher in 2021 with an idea of helping the poor and those least fortunate among us.
Good King Wenceslaus looked out on the feast of Stephen. Oh, the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel. When a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Hear the page and stand by me. me, if thou know'st it telling, yonder peasant, who is he, where and what his dwelling? Sire, he lives a good league hence, underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes' fountain. Bring me flesh and bring me wine, bring me pine logs hither, thou and I shall see him dine when we bear them thither. Page and monarch forth they went together, through the rude wind's wild lament and the bitter weather. Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind grows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps, my good page, tread thou in them boldly. Thou shalt find the winter's rage freeze thy blood less coldly. In his master's steps he trod, where the snow lay dented. Heat was in the very sod which the saint had printed. Therefore, Christian men, be sure, wealth or rank possessing, ye who now will bless the poor, shall